Work from home is incredibly challenging. Building culture remotely is impossible. It's very hard.
The theme of this podcast is about rapid response, and you are like the epitome of the person who runs to the new with great gusto and energy. I'm curious what rapid response means to you and what you're responding to now.
I think it means opportunity. I think it means curiosity. I think it means truth. You know, I'm fascinated by people's inability to get out of no culture, you know, to put their head in this. I'm fascinated by putting your head in the sand. It's what led me to discovering emotional intelligence. You know, for years, I was a public figure speaking of like, here's an opportunity, here's an opportunity, here's an opportunity. I would wonder why people close to me, let alone the general audience, wouldn't act on it. And it led me to realizing that people are insecure or lack self-esteem or really struggle with people's judgment or have these poor relationships with themselves. You know, it's funny, when you speak about rapid response, I think it means someone who lacks fear. You know, because the nature of running fast to something new is potentially scary. You may fail, you may waste your time, you may get burnt. But for me, it's subconscious. It's all I really know.
And that's not a bad thing to waste your time. I mean, you're not really wasting your time.
Well, that's my point. Like, so many of my friends are like, you spent 30 hours digging into that hypothesis. Your time has become so valuable. Why are you doing that? I'm like, because if I write once every 45 times, it fully pays for everything else. I think people are incredibly good at academia, but not good at actual life. And so, you know, to your point, I don't see it as waste of times. Things I've learned going down rabbit holes became data points and context to other moments of going down rabbit holes that allowed me to either bail early, pattern recognition, or triple down on an opportunity. And so, you know, I really don't know how a CEO or entrepreneur sees the world in any other way. I feel like that's their responsibility. I'm very empathetic to why a CFO or other executives in business context don't do it. But you know, it's funny, the whole framework of this makes me think about comfort, fear, self-esteem, insecurity. Those are the things that pop up in my mind when I hear it.
You've got a new book project.
Yes.
Day Trading Attention.
Yes.
You've done 6 business books before this, right? So why was this a rabbit hole that you decided to go down?
It's the biggest conversation I see that's universal. Whether you are a nonprofit, whether you're running for mayor, whether you are running a small business, whether you're the CEO of a big company, a creator, an influencer, everyone is trying to figure out how to create demand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like everyone's, you know, when I say everyone's selling something, I don't see that as a negative. I mean, everyone's trying to communicate something that matters to them. I think selling is very good when you believe in what you're selling. I think if you're part of a nonprofit curing a disease, that is incredibly good selling. And I also don't begrudge someone who's trying to sell lollipops. I did that in 6th grade. Like, everything's allowed as long as you're doing it the right way. And so I believe that the world of marketing and communication has made a very aggressive turn. And I think people are struggling and wasting money on traditional and digital. You know, I don't think this is a digital versus traditional thing. I think that I know, because I live in it every day, you can waste an ungodly amount of money on influencers, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Spotify, just as easily as you can in a newspaper or billboard or radio.
Yeah.
And so I think the craft of being great at storytelling, running ads, creating content for the modern internet, being prepared for the AR, VR world of the next decade, the framework that makes sense to me is day trading attention. Meaning, whether it's a Super Bowl ad, which I think is underpriced for Fortune 500, or it's a carousel ad on, you know, Instagram or LinkedIn, or it's an emerging influencer on TikTok to make content for your local car wash business or SaaS business that's selling to Fortune 500 companies on LinkedIn, I think the nuances of communication and marketing have become so profoundly challenging that most people are really struggling. And I'm very fortunate to be sitting in the eye of the storm. And I always get most excited when I think I'm writing a book that is going to lead to tens of thousands of emails of thank you. And I've written a couple of those, and I know what they feel like versus the other ones I've written that have less thank yous. I think this one's going to be a big one. I think it's a follow-up to Jab, 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 Right Hook, which was a big book that I wrote in 2013 that said this is how you do content on social media. This one is probably the nerdiest book I've ever written. It's like even, I'm a little worried that it may not be as commercially successful because it is a little textbooky. On the flip side, that's what might make it very commercially successful. So I definitely pushed myself to go further into like going behind the cloak of like what I do for a living, what we do for a living, why a lot of things work for me. I'm proud of that. What I mean by that is someone said something to me 6 or 7 years ago that really felt nice. It was like, I remember it hit me right in my chest. She didn't know me very well. She hung out in this business meeting and then went out and she said, "You're incredibly intellectually generous." And I was very flattered by that. And I feel like this book is intellectually generous. I feel like I'm writing a book of the secret sauce that makes most of my stuff work. And I'm excited that people are going to take that baton and be able to build for themselves.
And if I'm hearing, I mean, there's so many ways to reach people now. So
Yes.
many more ways than ever.
Yes.
And it sounds like you're saying that people feel like, oh, I have to cover all the bases, as opposed to looking at each one as a marketplace and figuring out what the right opportunity is for you, for your brand, for your message at that moment.
Period. That if you're like, there's just so many examples I can give. If you are a florist, Instagram feels incredibly natural because a lot of people are there, but it's also hard right now. The supply and demand of attention on Instagram makes it challenging.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I know the cliche, the average, the typical florist is not thinking about LinkedIn. Meanwhile, LinkedIn is acting like Facebook in 2015, where on LinkedIn, if you post about floral arrangements or why you're a good option for a corporate floral or just a one-off Valentine's Day thing, it is more likely that you will get organic reach on LinkedIn than Instagram. I know that 99.9% of the people listening to this podcast would not believe that to be true, but I know it to be true. And there's 100 other things I'm thinking about or know to be true. And so I'm going to use this book to lay that out, but also get people into the right mindset, which is there's attention and there's filling that attention. This podcast, everyone who listens to it is going to listen to me right now. The variable of success for me and for you is the words that come out of my mouth. The creative is the variable. If I give sharp insights, if I give things that bring people value, they will feel better towards me, right? So I think people are thinking about all these social networks as distribution, but not thinking about filling them with something that actually works. I believe that people are mainly mailing in the content. It's inherently selfish. Look at me, follow me, buy from me. It's incredibly repetitive. I look at brands and people every day, they're saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over. That's grounded in selfishness. And so I don't think people are strategic. I don't think they understand the science around the art of making a picture or video work for you in YouTube, YouTube Shorts, Facebook Reels, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp channel, Instagram channel. These are new things, broadcast channels, the carousel ad, the video, the reel versus the regular post, LinkedIn versus Twitter versus Snapchat. Snapchat discovery is where a lot of creators should be making content, but they're only making it on Instagram and TikTok. So in a lot of ways, the books I've been writing for the last almost 2 decades, I feel like this is the 301 course. And I'm really, you probably can sense it, I'm really proud of it. It was really harder for me. I always am so ahead of things that I can just spit it. But this one I wanted to like I'm dreaming of someone right now who's listening to this post the book coming out, buying the book on Amazon, and a week later having like 40 highlights in it and pen. Like I know I'm up to something. The 2 books that have, Crush It, which really put me on the map, right? That book and Jab, 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 Right Hook, it acted differently than the other books. All my books have done well. They've all been New York Times bestsellers, but I'm still getting emails about Jab, 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 Right Hook, even though a lot of the content is not as timely. And so I felt like I needed to do the updated version and the more advanced version. But still, I've always been the kind of communicator that's more of the average Joe. So because I record my books in audio form, I don't think I'm going to lose people in the 301-ness. And so I'm excited. I'm really excited about it.
So, an attention question to ask you about.
Please.
So, Taylor Swift,
Yes.
Travis Kelce,
Yes.
have changed the NFL's business.
Yes.
Without the NFL being a part of its plan at all.
That's right.
Like, what is the attention message from? I know you're a big NFL fan.
Yes,
so
I am.
Like, is there a message in that?
Yes, of course there is. It's actually one of the biggest parts of the book, which is that everybody on earth underestimates pop culture. What happened with Taylor and Kelce is they're cross-pollinating their platforms. So if you're a mechanic in Detroit, like I said in this post on social, you're not thinking about hitting up the Thai restaurant down the street to do a piece of social media content. I know that's true today. Yet, that's the kind of left field post that will get people's attention. And so what I see there is, what do I think about pop culture? I think it's one of the most significant currencies on earth. What if you're lucky enough to have an employee that works for you that's first name is Travis and another one that's first name is Taylor? Like, literally, you're a law firm. Travis Johnson, Taylor Smith. Maybe they're both guys, because Taylor is obviously a name that can go in either way. You can easily use the micro moment of the infatuation of our society to do something clever and silly. What people don't realize is that little clever video on Instagram that only got 90 views, one of those 90 views is someone who's actually considering to hire an attorney, and they actually like the fact that you were a little silly and not buttoned up, and you made them feel more comfortable to reach out to you to work with your law firm or your dentist place or your, people are very linear. They don't realize how big pop culture is and how they can factor into their boring business. I had a gentleman reach out to me who has, literally, I used a concrete cement business in one of my analogies in a piece of content. He literally owned a asphalt business. He literally started to make TikToks, even though he thought it was the wildest, craziest thing he'd ever heard. And it literally has doubled his business. An asphalt seller, like guy that comes and redoes your driveway, made a couple TikToks, one went decent, another one went viral, and literally, if I recall properly the email, a business that was doing $800,000 a year, servicing a local area, I think he was in Wisconsin, is now doing 2.5 million. The tears were coming through the email. But most people who are listening to this podcast who are in a B2B or like a different kind of business are not thinking how TikTok can work for them.
Right, and pop culture doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have your celebrity endorser.
Correct.
You're playing off of what the conversations that are going on.
It's like being good at a cocktail party, right? Think of this as your social media marketing. You go out tonight and it's a fundraiser of your local PTA or the school or it's the banquet for the high school basketball team. Are you the kind of person that comes to that event and you're enjoyable to talk to and have a circle around you, or are you in the corner by yourself? The reality is, being an introvert and not being comfortable in that is incredibly appropriate and awesome. As a business, you'd like to think that you're trying to market and get business. And so, to me, there's so much more permission for creativity than people allow themselves. But, people continue to wear their suit and tie in their LinkedIn profile. And they don't understand the room, is what I also ultimately think. I think you take the most stuffed up person you know. Literally, I want everyone to close their eyes and just think about the most kind of buttoned up, stuffy, rigid person you know. I promise you, if that person goes to Las Vegas right now with their best friends from college for a weekend, they're going to be a different version of themselves than you know them. And I think businesses and brands have more permission to be contextual to the room they're distributing the content in. When I make Facebook content, I'm thinking about parents because I know the demo is going to be older. Those are going to be different videos that I'm putting into TikTok where I know they're going to be youngsters. The words and the videos and the slang and everything I say and do is different. Yet I believe most people are just making a video and then pushing them out on these channels and expecting for it to succeed. They think of it as distribution. I think of it as a place you have to be contextual to win the room.
Because it's a conversation.
Before it even gets into a conversation, you can't win when you're a fish out of water. As a communicator, if you don't know the room, you will lose. If you go give a commencement speech to a very conservative college and you sling unlimited liberal propaganda, it won't land with those kids, and vice versa. If you're a Jets fan like I am, and you go to Boston and you shit on the Patriots the whole time, you're going to lose some people. You've got to know the room. And